Today we're going to talk about the Tascam MS-16. I love this machine. I can't get enough of it. The day it dies, I'm going to die inside, okay? So I think it's my duty to try to go through it, give a general overview what this thing's about, the features, the controls, how to use it, what I think about it, and everything in between those lines. I also have the auto locator accessory right here that I will be going over as well. Not everyone will have this accessory if they have this machine. I do not have the RC65, I believe it's called, which is just a remote control accessory. I do not have that one, so I will not be able to comment any further on that. The Tascam MS-16 is a 1-inch, 16-track tape machine. Now, this machine comes in two different versions. You got the 15 inches per second or the 30 inches per second. I have the 15 inches per second. This machine is equipped with balanced and unbalanced connections on the back. I will not be pulling my machine out from its position to show you the back today, so you're just going to have to take my word for it. Something to keep in mind during this video is I'm going to assume you, as the viewer, have never touched a tape machine before, and you're very inexperienced, and you basically need your handheld for using a tape machine for the first time. Without further ado, let's get cooking. Alright, now we're looking at the top of the machine. I'm going to give a really general overview of what we're looking at, and then we're going to zoom in on specific parts and get a more detailed look. So up here we have our supply reel and our take-up reel. Right now the tape is on the take-up reel. I'll explain why later. Here we have the power button and the speed control. Over here we have all the tape path items and all the things that are needed to be used to make sure that the tape is adequately running across the tape heads that are right here. And over here is the transport control. Before I throw it onto the tape, I just want to explain the tape path. These right here are what are called the tension rollers. These actually spin, unlike just tension arms that don't have a spinning surface there. The purpose of these is just to keep proper tension on the tape once it is spooled up, as you will see later. Over here, we have the pinch roller that when you engage the play button will pinch the tape between the rubber roller here and the capstan motor, which pulls the tape across the heads at a steady speed. If I open up this here, we get an easier look at what the tape head housing looks like. So here we have the reproduce head, which is used during mix down and playback. Here we have the record/sync head, which is used for when recording or doing overdubs. And here is the erase head. I'm going to get a closer look now at the individual tape path components here so we can get a better look. We're looking at a close-up view of the head housing now. Once again, we have the reproduce head, the record/sync head, and the erase head. Your tape's going to be traveling in this direction during playback. We have 4 tape guides here. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. This one looks different, but I'm pretty sure it serves the same exact function as these tape guides. This one just you aren't able to adjust. And as the name implies, the tape guides help guide the tape in the proper placement on the heads. You could adjust them either up or down depending on whether you need your tape to be slightly up, slightly down. Make sure everything's running smoothly. Here we have the tape lifters, which lift the tape off the heads when you're going in fast forward motion or rewinding to make sure you're not putting excessive wear onto your heads. As you will notice, it is very clean in here. I make sure to clean as much as possible, making sure your machine is pristine and clean. It ensures proper running of the machine, proper sonic qualities, making sure everything's running nice and good. So after we thread the tape across these tape heads, it's going to go onto this roller. This is the tachometer roller, and this serves 2 purposes. One, for a large radius bend for the tape to travel to this next tension roller, And in addition, it also keeps track of where exactly on the tape the machine is at. This way, you could set cue points and locate points and go back to specific points on your recorded material. It's all done through this guy here. So once it goes across that roller, it's going to go onto this tension roller here. Okay, so now I'm going to thread the tape onto the machine. Before you do this, you want to make sure that you properly cleaned it with some high quality alcohol cleaner and some Q-tips. Don't think you're going to use your grandma's old bloomers and some vodka. You know, make sure you're using some high purity stuff. You don't want to be messing around with these heads because you're not going to get these heads anywhere else. So use the proper fluid to make sure they are nice and clean. Every now and then, you are going to have to demagnetize everything metal in the tape path. And I won't go into specifics on how to do that right now, but there's plenty of videos available. You have to do this every once in a blue moon. There's a lot of arguments online of how often, if you ever need to do it. Some people say they never do it. I think as long as you do it every now and then, you should be fine. Before I thread the tape onto the machine, I'm going to explain why the tape is on the take-up reel and not the supply reel. This is called storing your tapes in the tails out configuration, meaning the tail of the tape is on the outside of the reel. This is the industry standard. You will see all professionals store their tape like this. The reason tape is stored like this is to prevent, or reduce rather, something called print through. Print through is when the recorded material on your tape leaks onto the subsequent layer. Leak's not a great word, but imprints itself onto the subsequent layer that it's touching in the reel. And when you store it in a tails out configuration, that imprinting it manifests itself as a post echo versus a pre echo if you were to store it on your supply reel. When it's a post echo, it hides better in the mix. Before a quiet section where, when loud drums are going to come in, if it's a pre-echo, you're going to hear it before the quiet section ends, if that makes sense. So when you have it on the post-echo, it's more hidden well, you don't hear it, and everyone's happy. Okay, we're going to thread the tape onto the machine now. It's going to be a little difficult for me to do because the camera's in the way, so bear with me a little bit here. First thing we're going to do is turn on the power just to get those electrical juices flowing while we're threading the machine. This starts the capstan roller. On this machine, there's no off state for this capstan roller. As long as the machine is on, it keeps rolling, which isn't the best, but it is what it is. All right, so we're going to put the tape around the first tension roller, around the pinch roller, in between the capstan motor, here and the pinch roller. I'm going to pull it across the tape heads, around the tachometer roller, around this tension roller here. Now, once again, it's going to be hard to do, kind of on the side here. Take this tape, and we're basically doing is we're going to sandwich the end of the tape underneath itself. I usually do it in a much better looking fashion, but this will do. Alright, so once that's done, the tape is now threaded. Okay, so the tape is threaded. Let's take a closer look at the controls now here. Alright, so now we're looking at an up-close view of the speed control module. We also see the power button up here. The speed control module has three options here. Normally, you're going to have it on fixed speed, and this just sets it at the factory set speed of your machine, which is either going to be 15 inches per second or 30 inches per second, depending on which model you have. You could also have it on the variable speed mode, which allows you to use these two sliders here, one coarse and one fine, to adjust the speed of the tape. You can see the number there change as I move the sliding knobs here. You also have the option for an external control module, which I do not have, which is why it's blinking like that. So I usually leave it on fixed though, so I'll leave that on fixed, which is at 15 inches per second on this machine. Over here is the tape lifter. When the machine is in fast forward mode or rewind mode, it cuts off the audio frequencies from tracks 1 through 15. And let's just say you were rewinding and you wanted to find the last song you recorded. When you touch this tape lifter in rewind or fast forward mode, it unmutes those tracks and you'll be able to hear the program material on the tape. It also, let me see if I could get a better look here. Alright, so let's put this in rewind mode. As you can see, these two arms here, it allows the tape to run across the tape head during that high-speed playback. And you're only going to be using this to try to find start and ends of songs. You're not going to be using this while recording a song, you know? Here is the splicing block for when you're doing your editing. It's got 3 different angles here. The 90 degrees for a more abrupt cut, whereas when you tilt the angle more, it's a little bit of a softer cut, a little bit easier on the ears, easier to blend, but it really depends on specific situation what angle you want to do. There's also this nice pop-up little guard here for when you're doing your editing so you don't nick your beautiful tape heads there. So now we're looking at the transport controls for the machine. We have the time that the tape is at, and we have minutes and seconds here, which can be reset to a 0 point just with this reset button here. So I just reset it to 0. So let's just say this is where we wanted to start recording our song. This is the 0 point. We have a Q button, a search to Q, and a return to 0. Return to 0 is the easiest to understand. We're at 0 right now, so let's just say we were 14 seconds from now. We'll go return to 0, and this will bring us back to 0. The Q point is basically, let's just say 2 minutes into our song is our chorus. We want to record the vocals on the chorus now. We would wait until 2 minutes. Okay, so we're at the 2-minute mark, right where our chorus starts, let's just say. We're going to set the cue point right there. And let's say we were at the beginning of the song now. Let's just say we're in the middle of the verse, and we would say, hey, we want to go to the chorus. We would search the cue, which we just set at the 2-minute mark. And there you go. Now we're at that exact spot that we set our cue point at. The play button's right here, pretty self-explanatory. Stop button, self-explanatory. Record button, whenever you want to record, you have to hold down record and press play at the same time. Most units are like this. Fast forward, rewind, and the edit button. Before I get to the edit button, I just want to explain something really quick about this fast forward button. When you press either this rewind and fast forward button, the tape winds at an incredible speed, right? Way faster than you would ever play the tape. When you are re-spooling your tape at the end of the day, you don't want to fast forward it to the end of the tape so it's all up on the take-up reel. That is too fast for a nice even wind. So Tascam very intelligently made a feature on this where a double tap, you see now it's blinking, when it's double tapped, the tapes, let's see if I could show you, the tape winds, or spools rather, at a slower speed. And this allows for an even wind, which prolongs the life of your tape, it protects the edges, and it's all around a better way to store your tapes. I didn't know this until way too far into having this machine, and that is a great feature. Alright, so I want to show you guys now what the edit button does. So let's just say you're at a point in the song where you want to make a splice. The edit button basically disengages the braking system on the take-up reels and allows you to rock the tape. You see how easy I'm rocking that with the finger? And this allows you to find specific points on the tape where you want to make your splice. Usually you'd be listening to a bass drum to find the one of a beat. And, you know, you would rock your tape back and forth, find where that bass drum lies, mark it, and make your splice on the splicing block here. Very useful, very nice function on this machine. One of the benefits of using a modern tape machine, you know, it's obviously not modern, but compared to other tape machines, very nice feature. Okay, now we are looking at the meter bridge here. We have 16 VU meters for each of these 16 tracks. Above each meter is your record LED, and let's just say we're going to arm track 5 for recording. You'll see that light up when I go to record, indicating that we are now recording onto track number 5. Directly below the meter bridge, which is right here off camera, we have where the channel cards are housed. I really don't feel like opening this baby up right now, but for you guys, I'm willing, so give me a second. Okay, I took the 4 screws out. It's a little difficult to get this open, so bear with me. The reason I'm being careful is I have broken this little tab here before, so there we go. Nice and easy, nice and easy. Nice and easy, folks. Don't hurt nothing. Okay. Here we go. Ah, look at that. So we have the 16 tracks here. Let me make sure you can see it on the camera. Yeah, you can see it. So we got the 16 tracks here. 4, 4, 4, 4. That equals 16, people. This is a relatively nice setup. I've seen other cabinets that have better access to the cards, but all things considered, this is a pretty small machine, so we can't complain. Now, here's where you make all your adjustments for each track. You know, the VU levels, the bias for each tape, the high-end frequency, all this jazz, all these little pots can be adjusted there. It's pretty nice. I like it. Hopefully you don't have to go in here too often. Before I close this, I want to mention something. If you own this machine and you need to work on one of these cards, first of all, do not take them out when the machine is on, which is why I turned the machine off just as a precaution here. If these cards have never been taken out of your machine, which when I bought this machine, I don't think these cards have ever been taken out, it's almost impossible to pull these cards out of here. I had to make up this own little tool here. I'll show you in case you need to do it. I just took some baling wire or an old hanger or something. Basically put 2 hooks. I'm sure you can see that on camera. 2 hooks like that. And what I do is you can't see it on the camera probably, but there's holes in each card. And I basically put one in one hole, put another in another hole on the opposite side of the card, and very gently pull. It's going to take a lot of force. So if you think you're going to break it, just trust me. Just do this. Ease at it. Don't just yank it like a maniac, okay? And you'll be fine. All right, let's get this baby closed back up. All right. And always remember, this goes for anything, anytime you're putting something together that involves bolts or screws, never fully tighten any one of them until you have them all in the proper spot and everything's lined up, or else you're going to start stripping your threads out and your holes. And nobody wants that, okay? So let's be careful. All right, good enough. Let's move on here. Below that, we have our noise reduction system that's built into the machine. We have channels 1 through 8 here, indicated by this LED, and channels 9 through 16 indicated here. You could choose which tracks you want to apply the noise reduction to. Just remember that any track you record with this noise reduction onto it, you need to play back with the noise reduction button enabled, because it will not sound correct. I have personally, now don't tell anyone, right? Don't tell on me, but I've never used this. I've never even checked if it works, to be honest with you. And there's a lot of debate online whether or not you should be using noise reduction. I'm not even going to get into that whole mess. I just personally have never done it, so I can't even speak to it. The height adjustment features here on this machine are really convenient, and they help tilt the machine and raise it up and down to the height that you would like. I don't feel like demonstrating today because I like the position it's in. I'm just kidding. We're gonna show you. Oh boy. That's why I don't want to show you. All right, so you get this much amount of motion. I'm afraid to do more because I don't feel like messing up my jacks in the back. Good enough. Okay, now we're looking at the remote control module. I usually have this far away from the tape machine on my other side of my console so I could use this without having to touch the tape machine at all during tracking and mixing. There's actually two modules here that we're looking at. This bottom module, the record strip, everyone's going to have this on their Tascam MS-16, whereas this AQ65 autolocator, this is an add-on accessory. First, we're going to go over this strip and explain all the buttons on it. Let's get a closer look now. Okay, so the top row here is the arm for recording button here, and let's just say we wanted to record track 1, 2, and 3. Now these are armed for recording, so when we go to record our track, it's going to record onto tracks 1, 2, and 3. The buttons below here are the sync buttons. Now I'm going to try to explain this to the best of my abilities. It's a really simple idea. I just kind of suck at explaining things sometimes. So in normal operation, when you arm tracks for recording like this, on your console, you are going to hear whatever signal is being passed to these tracks. So let's just say now that you had just recorded your drum track and you wanted to listen back and make sure you didn't want to do any overdubs, do a retracking of any sorts. If you rewinded back to the 0 point and press play, you wouldn't be hearing what you just recorded onto those 3 tracks. You're going to be hearing the microphones, that one that's still connected to the bass drum, one that's still next to the snare drum, one that's your overhead, because you're still armed for recording. Now, yes, you could just unarm, but when you're going through a lot of overdubbing, especially on parts that are difficult, you're not going to want to keep pressing this. What you're going to do instead is you're going to press the sync buttons. Now, this overrides you hearing the inputs to these tracks. When you go back to that 0 point and press play, you're now going to hear what you just recorded onto those tracks. Now, this feature is pretty much essential for overdubbing, because if, let's just say you're recording, we just recorded the drum track, right, on 1, 2, and 3, let's just say. Now we're doing the bass track. So we armed 4 for the bass track, and let's just say we do a take. So we just did the take, we want to go back and listen and go back to the 0 point. If we were to press play right now, we obviously wouldn't hear it, so we would need the sync button going. Now the sync button's going, we could hear what we just recorded onto track 4. Let's just say at the chorus, we flub the bass line, we want to redo the bass. This is no good, we got to do it over, right? What we're going to do is leave this sync on, the bass player's going to play along with themselves during the verse, and right when the chorus is about to happen, we're going to do an overdub, and this will switch off, and the bass player will now be hearing what they're currently playing. Very useful. Okay, I also want to show the few ways you could do overdubs and punch-ins on this machine. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that we have recorded material on all 16 tracks here. We want to re-record the chorus for 5, 6, and 7. Okay. And we're going to punch in right at 1 minute and 30 seconds. There's a couple ways you could do this. The first way is, as we're approaching 1 minute and 30 seconds, I could press record. Now these are punched in. Now we're recording in 5, 6, and 7. There is also another way to do this. Let's unselect those. Let's say we want to record at 1 minute and 35 seconds the tracks number 5 and 6. Right now we have no tracks armed for recording. I'm gonna go in record function. Right now this is blinking, and let's say at 1 minute and 35 seconds we're gonna go like this. Bam! We just punched those in. There you go. It's another way to do it. And you could get real creative with this. You could punch in certain tracks at certain times, other ones at other times. You could get real wild with it. So possibilities are endless here. Okay, so now we have these 6 buttons up close, so we can go over their functions. The bottom 3 is the output select, and this basically selects what you'll be hearing at your console. I normally have it in the sync function for most of the time. That means I'll be monitoring off the record and sync head. If I was doing my mix down, I would be going to the reproduce head here. And let's just say I had a whole band mic'd up and I wanted to test the inputs. Input here, you hear every single source that is going to each track. And that's useful for just getting levels, make sure everything's working right, make sure all the microphones are hooked up correctly and everything's running smoothly. The 3 buttons up here basically serve different muting purposes. This stop mute here mutes the audio circuitry when you play the tape from a stop, or stop the tape when you're during playback, and it basically just gets rid of that winding up or winding down noise of the tape. This lifter / defeat mute, as I briefly mentioned before, what this button does is it mutes the audio tracks of 1 through 15. You might be wondering, what about track 16? The reason this doesn't mute track 16 is because this machine can be used with a synchronizer, and the synchronizer is going to be using the track 16 to make sure everything is synchronized correctly and you don't have any slippage in the setup. And this last button here is called the input enable button. I usually don't have this enabled. What it does is when you do have it enabled, it basically acts as if your output select is in the input mode when you are fast forwarding, searching the cue, rewinding, when you're in stop mode. And this basically is really useful when you're recording in a live band setting and you want to be able to hear the band members in the recording room while you were in the control room. If you didn't have this enabled, you'd have to be unarming tracks, switching these output selects. It gets a little messy, whereas with the click of a button, it takes care of all that for you. Now, this button in combination with the sync and record, things start getting a little complicated, but when you start using it in practice, everything will make a lot more sense. I'm not going to bother explaining all the different scenarios you could be in for this video. All right, we're going to move on to the auto locator now. Now, as I mentioned before, this is just an accessory, but man, oh man, it's almost essential in my opinion. This thing is extremely useful when recording. And basically what you're able to do is, one, you have your normal transport control, so you could use this as a remote unit. And you also are able to store up to 10 different locate points in memory, which is obviously awesome when you're doing overdubbing. And let's just say you got one at the first verse, the bridge, the chorus, the second verse. This way, you could transport to those locations in the song very quickly. Okay, so let's see how well I could explain how this thing works. We are going to simplify it by first just focusing on this section. This shows you the tape time, just like it would on the actual machine over there, like we were seeing. There's a reset button, just like there is over there, that resets the 0 time. So now we're at the 0 point at the tape that we have chosen. There is also the return to 0 button, as we talked about before on the actual machine itself. And these buttons are used in conjunction with the locate function. So let me move over to here. So this is the locate time up here, locate time. There's 10 total memory spots you could save locate times to. And this basically allows you to store certain spots in the song. Let's just say you want to save one at the first verse, the bridge, the chorus, the second verse, and so forth. So let's start with a fresh slate. Let's clear all the memory here. So we're going to clear 0. We're going to clear 1. So let's say we want to store the time of 1 minute and 23 seconds in memory 3, let's just say. So let's start with 0 here. So 1 minute and 23 seconds. Oh boy. 1 minute and 23 seconds. we are going to store this in memory number 3. Now, that is stored in memory number 3. So let's just say the locate time was now at 0. We said we want to go to memory 3. We would recall 3. And now that locate time is chosen, we are able to press the search button here. And now is going to search the tape time here to the locate time of 1 minute and 23 seconds. So you could do this in 10 different spots, as I said. You could also do it, instead of manually typing it in with the numeric pad, there is a direct store button here. So let's just say we're playing, and at 1 minute and 30 seconds is our chorus, and we want to store this in the next available spot. 1 minute and 30 seconds, direct store. That is now stored in memory 0. So now, let's just say, hey, we want to go back to memory point 3. We could press the recall button over here, recall to 3. That changes it back to 1 minute and 23 seconds, which should be saved there. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Hopefully I explained that well. It's a very useful function. I use this all the time. There's also a repeat button here, which, as the name implies, you could set this up basically to repeat through selected memory points. One last button here is the pre-roll button. This just allows you to set a pre-roll time for when you locate to select time. So let's just say we wanted a 10-second pre-roll time, and we wanted a 10-second pre-roll time, so we're going to put in 10 store pre-roll. So now that 10-second time should be stored in the pre-roll. So now let's just say we wanted to, let's recall our 0 point. So 0 points at 1:30. So now when we press search here, it should take us to 1 minute and 20 seconds. Searching to 1 minute and 30 plus the 10 seconds for the pre-roll, minute and 20 seconds, or at least somewhere close to it. There you go, minute and 20 seconds. Can you believe it? All right. Let me just show all the buttons here on the numeric pad. So obviously you have the numbers here. You have the ability to make the time either positive or negative there. The store button is just to store on the separate memory points. Let's just say at 1 minute and 55 seconds, we want to store it onto memory 8. That is now on memory 8. Recall just lets you recall the memory points. So recall 3 brought us to 123, which we stored in number 3. Clear, say we want to get rid of the memory point at 8. We cleared that. There's also these arrows here, and what that does, let me zoom out here a little bit. What the arrows do is it allows you to switch this time to here and this time to here. So let's just say we want to change the tape time to 9 minutes. That doesn't make sense. Hold on. Can't have 99 seconds. Let's try this again. Let's say we want to put 1 minute and 25 seconds here. We would type in 125. This little left arrow, press that. That time is now here. Now let's just say we want to change memory 3 to 125. We would press the right button here. That just changed this time to here. Store 3. This is now changed to 125. And there you go. One last thing about this unit is there's this little speed LED switch here. This is just as a failsafe to make sure that this unit is set up correctly with your machine and to make sure that they're both set to either 15 inches per second or 30 inches per second, depending on which model you have. Okay, so that's pretty much all the functionality, all the buttons on the machine and the autolocator accessory. Hopefully I explained it well, and if you were given this machine, you'd know how to use it. Some reflections, it's honestly never let me down. The Tascam console that's behind me, I bought with this tape machine, and I have so many complaints about it. It's constant issues, constant soldering, constant messing with things, but that tape machine, man, it's never given me any issues. There's a lot of commentary on forums online debating whether or not the 30 inch per second machine is any good. People argue it's completely useless. You can't get a usable recording on it. Meanwhile, other people say they have zero issues. You know, the debate could go on forever. Tape heads in general can be very pedantic about minor issues like this. I mean, there certainly is a difference. Don't get me wrong. 15 inch per second is going to give you a much bigger low-end bump, whereas a 30 inch per second is going to give you more high-end. You know, there's more nuances to it, but that's basically the basic of it. And people argue back and forth whether or not the 30 inch per second is worth buying or not. And, you know, I don't have one, so I can't make an opinion on it. There is also the ability to modify a machine to change it from either 15 inch per second to 30 inches per second or vice versa. There's a fella named Paul Miller, I believe, that I've been in contact with. He has a whole write-up on, I forget what website it's on, but he has a write-up detailing his experience with modifying his unit to be able to play both speeds, and basically goes over the necessary components you would need to swap out on your channel cards to make this conversion successful. One comment I do have is it's a little difficult setting the bias on this machine. I don't know the correct terminology, but the trim pot to set the bias seems like it doesn't have enough range to accurately set the bias to high levels. This is something that can be remedied by swapping out a few components on the channel cards. If you're interested in finding out more about that, just let me know. I could lead you in the right direction. Some other minor issues that are just popping to my head. The high-end frequency on track 1 and track 16 is a little shaky, but that's very typical on tape machines. The outer tracks really should be reserved to the bass drum or a bass guitar, something you're not concerned about the high end, because there is going to be some filtering there. There is one complaint that I almost forgot to mention that I have about this machine, and it's the machine's tendency to overshoot its searching function. But what I mean by that is, say I'm at 3 minutes and I want to return to the 0 point. I press return to 0. It won't initially stop on the 0 point. It will overshoot that point, sometimes as much as 30 seconds, and so it'll go into negative 30 seconds and slowly bring its way back to the 0 point. Now, some people say this is the design of the machine, and it mentions it in the manual that this machine has dynamic braking and it's easier on the tape and all that. But there's also these adjustments that are located on this auto locator in the back, these little dip switches, where you could basically adjust how much it overshoots by, and if it's overshooting by too much, you can make that adjustment. My switches on my machine make zero difference, and I see other people online say the same thing, where these dip switches make zero change in this behavior, and at first it really annoyed me. I kind of get used to it. It's kind of rewinding to 0 points and Q points is just kind of what you have to deal with tape anyway, and if this is the machine's way of saving life of your tape and not stretching it out, I guess I'll deal with it. There's only so much I could say about the sonic sound of this tape machine. You're gonna have to listen to my personal music that I've recorded on it to make that assumption. To me, it sounds great. Most of the bad things that come from my recording is from this console that I complained about earlier, and the machine is dead quiet if I don't go through this console. It's a very well-made machine. I think Tascam did a very well job in consideration of everything. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I explained it well. I think this is turning out to be like a 40-minute video, which is insane. I'm so sorry. I kind of just tend to ramble on. If there's questions or comments, please put it down below. My manager says I should be asking people to subscribe and like my video. I'm not going to do that guy. And thank you very much for listening. See you next time.